Hello, this is Unsilent GameLeap, and today we're providing you with a tier list for patch 13.18. The highlights of this patch are nerfs to Shojin users in top and jungle, stabilizing the meta until the 13.20 preseason changes, and also introducing Briar to the game. Spoiler! Shojin champions are still overpowered, bruisers are going to remain top tier in basically every role, and the champions that have received adjustments this patch are completely broken. Now onto the tier list. Just to clarify, this tier list is the best for climbing from Iron to Diamond. If I were to rate these champions for their max potential in the hands of a professional, these lists would look a lot different. K'Sante would be broken tier along with Zeri and Azir. But that's not our goal for today. Our goal is to give you the best condensed list to impact your games on a new patch immediately, so you can get that LP up and make your goals while still having fun. Let's go ahead and begin with top lane. As with last patch, bruiser top laners are king. The -5 AD to Shojin has done nothing to bring down the top performers in this role, and unless 13.19 has significant changes to Spear or Iron Spike items, this is the way that it'll remain until next season. Aatrox and Renekton are still our biggest winners of this patch. These champions are insanely strong blind picks that do well even in matchups that, quote, counter them. If you want bruisers that give you the best carry potential, then these are your picks. If you want an in-depth guide to all mechanics, tips, and tricks for any of these champions that you see on this list, head on over to GameLeap.com by clicking on the description box below. I've been working on the website for over 3 years, creating courses for people like you to use and abuse. If you want to pick up a champion in the shortest amount of time, there is no better resource. See you on the site. Darius retains his spot simply due to how much pressure he exerts on basically every cast of champ. He's strong into tanks, into squishies, and into other bruisers, so for this reason he still sits firmly in top 5. Garen is our next pick for S+, because he's super simple, really solid, and has some of the best scaling in the game. There's a new build going around that breaks this champion as well. Stridebreaker into Hullbreaker into Double Zeal into Deadman's Plate turns Garen into an absolute split-pushing monster with obscene flank potential. We have so many tank stats that are borderline impossible to stop. The damage from Double Zeal is more than enough to one-rotate even the tankiest of opponents, and the movement speed bonuses that we get make us uncatchable. If you notice that your games are going a bit later or want to win by split pushing, then abuse this fast. This build is completely broken. And our final S+ pick goes to Camille. Camille has been sleeper for a long time, but the prevalence of some of the other picks has done a good job of holding her back. Now that some of the other carry tops have been nerfed down by the previous patch, Camille is back to shining as a high skill, high reward champion. If you want to invest a lot of time into a top lane champion and don't know where to place it, consider picking up Camille. She beats Garen, Aatrox, and any other tank while having an okay time into Renekton and Darius post one item. Sunder or Trinity Force Ravenous Hydra into Hullbreaker is the overpowered build on this champion, and it only takes one game of getting this point to understand why. Trin did end up getting knocked out of S by the nerfs, but it's only because he doesn't auto-win 90% of his matchups anymore. It's closer to about 80%. Tryndamere has a very unique playstyle, which makes him not really worth as picking up as some of the picks here. As far as top laners go, stay away from picking K'Sante as he is slated for a rework very shortly. This champion requires too much time to get good at, which will then be wasted when his kit gets updated. Jungle has received the least amount of movement from any of our previous tiers. J4, as predicted, fell about 10 spots, meaning that he's still really strong, just not blatantly overpowered. Rek'Sai is the queen of the jungle once more, with the Stridebreaker build being disgustingly OP. This champ has a low pick rate, and this absolutely needs to change. Pick her more, abuse her while you can, and then laugh at everybody trying to struggle on their balanced junglers. Hecarim is still S+ tier with the Shojin into Stridebreaker Phase Rush build. Every other build puts this champion into A tier. Play the OP build and get this champion nerfed as soon as possible, please, I am begging you, I'm sick of seeing him. Kayn receives slight nerfs. These don't really change how easy he is to play, and just how hard both forms counter their respective prey. Shadow Assassin still overkills basically every squishy, with the Duskblade into Axiom Arc build having next to no counterplay, while Rost decimates any and all tanky lineups. Nocturne is potentially the most slept on Iron Spike champion in the game. This champion scales disgustingly hard, has one of the best solo queue ultimates, and is super simple to execute. Solid S+ tier pick. Evelynn has been overpowered for a long time. No other AP jungler has the amount of control over a solo queue game that Evelynn does. While her early game is quite weak, every gank after 6 should result in a kill, easily placing her in the S+ tier due to her snowball potential and map control. Now, as far as champions to stay away from in the jungle, I would recommend sticking to the overpowered picks and not playing too many of the average picks. Champions like Lee Sin cannot compete with Hecarim, Rek'Sai, Evelynn, and Nocturne currently. They're simply too hard to execute for too little reward. I would just play what's in the broken and strong tiers right now. Mid lane has received a rework to Crown of the Shatter Queen that, as we predicted, has opened up a lot of new users for the item. AP assassins are up big and definitely worth investing time into, with most of them shooting up in win rate a pretty decent amount. AD assassin mids are kind of struggling with all the bruisers, but they're still playable if you're a main. Vex is still public enemy number 1 to every mid laner. This champion has basically no terrible matchups and even does well into champions that outrange her post 6. Abuse her for as long as you can if you want free LP. This champion is very easy to execute, incredibly rewarding to play, and offers reset multi-kills, which basically no other control mage does. Sylas is our next pick for this list. The crown changes and buff stamina in 13.16 are finally starting to show huge effects for this champion. He's great for snowballing, has good scaling, does well into low range and high range matchups, and does both well against and with the current meta junglers. Don't tunnel vision too hard on stealing amazing ultis on this champion. Sylas functions really well without them, but the current mid lane meta champs also have god tier ultis for Sylas to steal, cementing him as an S+ tier pick for this patch. Neeko remains a solid pick. Her kit is very generic, simple to understand outside of the camo mechanic, and has some of the highest teamfight CC available for anyone who loves Wombo. This champion will never be weak with her current numbers, so make sure that you pick her up. Speaking of Wombo, Orianna is our next pick on this list. Ori's damage has been buffed over and over and over and over again, making her an incredibly high damage, high impact, low risk champion. If you're against a melee mid as this champ, basically every matchup is free. All we need to learn is how to make effective use of the ball to really turn Orianna into an oppressive, high damage, high teamfight potential pick. Tristana is our last OP pick for this patch, and once again this has to deal with the rise of melees. She has good matchups into like 95% of these champions, good solo carry potential, and reward split pushing like no other due to her E. For these reasons, Triss sits high tier on this list. Zed is also a champion I would place into this tier normally due to how strong the Ravenous Hydra build is, but Lissandra, Sylas, and Vex being strong keep him from completely dominating this tier. This keeps him a tier below all the other picks listed, but Zed is definitely on our radar. As far as mid lane picks go, try to avoid things that are weak into the melee assassins. If we're playing something like Swain, which is weak during the lane phase, we're not really going to have that much of an impact. So for these reasons, we want to play stuff that is high pressure early game with decent scaling. This means no more Kai'Sa mid, try to stay away from LB, and also don't waste your time playing something like Malzahar. Bot lane is our next role on this list. There have actually been a decent amount of changes to the bot lane tier list due to the Shiv statline change and the rise of bruisers overall. Crit ADCs are kind of struggling, on-hit ADCs require too many items, but one cast of champion stands above all others. Ashe is still without a doubt the strongest ADC in the game when it comes to the combination of utility and damage. She has an answer for absolutely everything. Tanks, you can go on-hit, bruisers can't reach you due to the slows and RR. Assassins are very easy for you to pick with a good enchanted crystal arrow. This champion will always remain solid until Lethal Tempo or Trinity Force receives a substantial amount of nerfs. Vayne is a surprising addition to S+ tier. The readjustments to Shiv have made her do more damage early game, which allow her to snowball to her really strong mid game more consistently. Shiv into Trinity is the way to go on this champion. She has good 1v1s into all meta ADCs, can turn basically any bad matchup into good ones due to her flexible kit, and has a good time killing bruisers in front to back fights or in a side lane by herself. If the enemy team doesn't pick obscenely high harass, there is no better carry for playing independently at the moment. Have you guys noticed a trend with all the ADCs listed so far? They're not tied to crit, and neither is our next pick. Ezreal is dominating bot lane due to his decent early game, immense scaling, and the ability to go Sheen items. Trinity Muramana Ezreal is top tier, as is Essence Reaver Duskblade. Pick this champion when you don't trust your support, or if you want to kite the enemy team heavily. Just make sure to weave in auto attacks instead of only spamming Q. Ezreal with auto attacks woven in is S+ tier, whereas sitting back and slinging Qs sits way closer to average. There is also a very big difference between playing Ezreal for early game with Press the Attack and playing him with Conqueror. Press the Attack Ezreal has one of the strongest level 2s in all of bot lane, whereas Conqueror Ezreal does not have nearly as strong of a level 2. So if you're against a matchup where you need to snowball, Ezreal has the flexibility to give you that option. Go Press when you want to smash lane, and then Conquer when you want to scale outside of it. MF is one of the biggest benefactors of these low range champions seeing play. She dismantles Vayne, does insanely well into Kai'Sa, and is decent into Ashe, while also punishing Xayah hard. Lethality MF is still her strongest build, but Crit MF is also eating good this patch with W max. If you want to smash lane and then snowball outside of that, then go Lethality, otherwise for a stronger mid and late game, go the Crit on hit build. Or Marksman, try to stay away from the heavily Crit 80 carries. Crit ADCs are just not doing as strong right now. Trinity Force is definitely the way to go. I would recommend that you play a Triforce ADC, then play a Mage bot lane, and if you don't want to play that, then we can play the Crit 80 carries, but they're definitely on the weaker end. The items are simply too expensive, and it's really hard to make use out of these champions before the game ends up blowing up in your face. Support is the role with the most amount of changes this patch for sure. Basically every support in the game is alright at the moment, with the worst cast of champions being enchanters. This isn't because enchanters are necessarily bad, they're actually very strong, but ADCs that synergize with them aren't. The supports that have the biggest impact this patch are independent, able to make plays by themselves, and then scale decently well. Engaged champions are still very strong, but the buffs to Bard and Senna come through full force and actually kind of knock them back a tier. Blitzcrank is still without a doubt our strongest champion as far as supports go. One well-placed hook changes the course of a game, and he counters both Bard and Senna. This cements him as the king of bot lane, and this won't change without a shakeup to the meta or direct nerfs to him. Rakan is still a strong contender for number 1, but his difficulty is the only thing that holds him back. In higher levels of play, Rakan is a better blind pick. but the steep learning curve to this champion is what prevents him from being the end-all, be-all of supports. Bard is up huge after his buffs, going from a 50.5% win rate to a massive 52% win rate. Don't let his silly playstyle distract you from just how overpowered this champion is. Troll your ADC just a little bit more this patch by playing Bard. Senna is also a huge winner of this patch. Whoever would have guessed that an 8% damage increase on all of her crits would have a big effect? Play her with a normal Umbral Glaive into Eclipse build for free wins. This champion scales really hard, has good matchups into engaged champions if they're incapable of hitting their spells, and also hard counters enchanters, which is part of the reasons why enchanters are on the weaker end. When Senna's strong, enchanters are usually not pickable. Thresh also went up a massive 3% win rate when using the correct build. This champion without Guardian and maxing W sat at a 49% win rate last patch, while this patch he sits at nearly 51% with just swapping from Glacial to Guardian. If you play Guardian Q into W max Thresh, this difference grows even more substantially, putting Thresh as the highest win rate support bot lane when played the correct way. This champion is very difficult to play, but once we understand how to make the most out of his kit, this is without a doubt the strongest champion when mastered. There is a large chance that there are going to be some nerfs to Thresh coming very shortly, and it's simply due to this build and how strong it is in higher levels of play. Make sure that you adapt this playstyle so you can get free wins for yourself too if you like playing Thresh. Now, as far as supports go, I would say that there's not really a support champion that you should stay away from. All these champions are pretty solid. The weakest supports are usually going to be cheese picks, and then of course those cheese picks aren't really going to be in the greatest spot to begin with. Anyways, this was Unsung with GameLeap. Thank you all for watching and I hope you all have a wonderful day. I'll see you all in the next video.